They say monsters lurk in the dark. But Aya had discovered the most perilous hiding spot was in the open, concealed within human flesh, breathing human air, and bleeding red just like them. For a decade, her true essence, which flowed like liquid starlight, had been suppressed. 10 years, a litany of carefully constructed falsehoods. Every dawn, she faced her reflection in a fractured mirror within the servant's wing of Dusk Falls Citadel, pressing her hand to the glass and murmuring the celestial words that imprisoned her true self beneath a fragile human shell. The incantation became more difficult with each passing year, a sensation akin to holding one's breath underwater as the lungs screamed for release. She was only 17 when she first entered the Citadel's gates, another displaced youth from the border conflicts looking for a place in the scullery. No one gave a second thought to one more desperate girl with work-worn hands and a quiet demeanor. No one could have imagined that beneath her unassuming skin dwelled something ancient, a creature from an older world, before humankind learned to forge cinder iron and whisper prayers to new gods. Now, at 27, an age that meant little to a being like her, Aya stood in the pre-dawn gloom of the expansive kitchen, kneading dough with a rhythm that had become her anchor. The other servants called her Serene, a bitter joke that often made her bite her tongue until it bled crimson. Serene because she had survived when so many others had perished. Serene because she had a post in the Citadel while others starved on the streets. If they only knew she was the very entity their inquisitors warned of in their sermons, the last of the Celestians, beings of pure cosmic energy who had once shaped these lands before the Great Culling. The kitchen door flew open, letting in a blast of winter air and panicked energy. "The king is back," Boris, the head cook, roared. 3 days ahead of schedule from the northern front. Aya's hands froze in the dough. Alpha King Kalen Valerius, who had claimed his throne 5 years prior after his father's sudden death. The same Alpha whose wolf was said to be able to send a lie from across the continent, whose dark eyes, flecked with gold, could pierce any disguise. She had successfully avoided him for 5 years, confining herself to the kitchens during state events and melting into the servant passages whenever his formidable presence filled the Citadel. Yet in the dead of night, she sometimes felt him, a pull like a tide, a sense of falling, a feeling that every mistake she had ever fled was calling her back. The other staff burst into frantic activity, but Aya was paralyzed, flour coating her arms like fresh snow. She could feel him now, his approach like a thunderstorm gathering over the sea. Her true nature stirred beneath its human mask, sensing something in him that frightened her more than any inquisitor's blade or holy fire. "Serene, bully snupped, stop your daydreaming. The king will require fresh bread." She willed her limbs to move, but her hand shook. Today was different. The very air felt tense. Ominous signs had been appearing lately. Children in the market with eyes that held flecks of starlight, shadows that seemed to move on their own, cinder iron tools that would occasionally grow warm to the touch. As she worked, memories rose unbidden. Her mother's radiant form shattering under cinder iron mallets. Her sister's screams as consecrated ash burned through her essence. The night she learned to fold her being into a human form, to compress her infinite nature in a finite flesh and swallow her inner starlight until only a shadow remained. The burden of being the last one, the survivor who lived by becoming the antithesis of her people. By the time the sun illuminated the Citadel's dark stone walls, the kitchen was a hive of activity. Aya had just taken fresh loaves from the oven when she heard them. Footsteps in the adjoining corridor. Not the hurried clatter of servants, nor the rhythmic tread of guards, but something else entirely. Deliberate, predatory. The footsteps halted just outside the kitchen door. Every fiber of her being screamed at her to flee, to dissolve into wind and shadow and escape this place. But she was trapped, her human form a prison. And beneath it, her true self writhed, recognizing what waited on the other side of that door. The handle turned. King Kalen Valerius stepped inside, and the kitchen fell into a deathly silence. He was every bit as imposing as the legends claimed, towering over most men with shoulders as broad as a mountain pass, his hair as dark as a starless night, and a face that looked as if it were carved from granite and shadow. But it was his eyes that stole the breath. Deep brown with sparks of gold, they seemed to hold the weight of all secrets. Those eyes scanned the room, gliding past cowering servants and steaming cauldrons, dismissing everything until they landed on her. And stopped. The world contracted to that single moment. The Alpha King staring at a flower-dusted servant girl, while something primal and undeniable hummed in the air between them. For 10 agonizing seconds, neither of them moved. The kitchen held its breath as Aya's heart pounded against her ribs. Too fast, too hard, too human. She forced herself to curtsy with the others, her gaze fixed on the stone floor. "Your Majesty," Boris stammered, "we were not expecting you. Forgive the state of our morning preparations. Continue your work." The king's voice resonated through the room, a deep rumble that could shake foundations. "I came to inspect the kitchens myself," a lie. Even Aya, trapped in her human shell, could taste the falsehood. Alpha Kings did not inspect kitchens at dawn. They had stewards and entire hierarchies for such things. She kept her head bowed, her hands moving mechanically while every nerve ending screamed a warning. In her periphery, she saw his battle-worn leather boots moving between the tables. He paused at each station, asking questions about supply and method that no king should know or care about. He was circling her, a wolf stalking its quarry. "And who is this?" His boots stopped directly in front of her workstation. "That's Serene, Your Majesty," Boris answered quickly. "She's been with us for nearly a decade. Bakes the finest honey cakes in the kingdom." Serene, the king pronounced the name as if tasting a rare vintage. "Look at me." It was not an alpha command, which held a power that could shatter the strongest will. This was softer, far more dangerous, a request that sounded like destiny. Aya slowly lifted her head, schooling her features into a blank mask as their eyes met. The impact was immediate. An invisible current crackled between them, making every candle flame in the room dance. His pupils dilated, the brown swallowing the gold until his eyes were like portals into the earth's core. She saw the precise moment his wolf rose to the surface, a flash of amber in the darkness before it was gone. "Curious," he murmured, tilting his head. "Tell me, Serene, where are you from?" "The Southern Territories, Your Majesty." The lie was smooth, practiced over thousands of repetitions. "My family was lost to the Crimson Fever 10 years ago." The fever, his lips curved into something that wasn't a smile. Yes, many were lost, he knew. Impossibly, he knew she was lying. She saw it in the predatory stillness of his posture, the slight flare of his nostrils, as if he scented something beneath her human scent. But he didn't challenge her. Instead, he reached for one of the rolls she had been shaping, his fingers brushing against hers. The contact was fleeting, but it sent starlight fire coursing through her veins. Her true nature surged, desperate to answer the call his touch had sent. She pulled her hand back as if burned, and for a terrifying instant, her disguise flickered. Her shadow on the wall distorted, twisting with too many angles, like a reflection in shattered glass. The air around her shimmered with a heat that had nothing to do with the ovens. The king's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. "Forgive my clumsiness, Your Majesty," she gasped, dropping to her knees, overcome with genuine terror. "Rise." The command was gentle but absolute. She stood on trembling legs as he studied her with an intensity that could strip paint from walls. "You will serve at tonight's welcome banquet." "But, Your Majesty," Boris interjected, "Serene works in the kitchens, not the Great Hall." "Tonight, she serves." His tone permitted no argument. Then, directly to her, he added, "Were something appropriate. You will pour the wine at the high table, where she would be exposed to every noble, every courtier, every person who might notice a single flaw, where she would have to stand for hours under the scrutiny of those who hunted her kind. But worst of all, where she would be near him. One more thing," The king paused at the door, his dark gaze finding hers once more. "Your shadow, Serene. You might want to see to it." Her blood ran cold. She glanced down to see her shadow, stretched in impossible ways, writhing as if alive, reaching for him with ethereal fingers that belonged to no human. It had been misbehaving more often lately, as if her disguise was finally fraying. When she looked up, he was gone, leaving behind only the echo of his presence and the chilling certainty that her decade of hiding was over. The great hall was transformed at dusk, 1,000 candles casting flickering shadows on walls that had stood for centuries. Aya stood in a borrowed servant's gown of deep blue, trying to quell the tempest beneath her skin. "Remember, Ilara, the head of staff, whispered sharply, 'Pour from the right. Do not speak unless spoken to. And for the gods' sake, do not make eye contact with the nobility. If only it were so simple.' The doors swung open, and the aristocracy of the kingdom poured in. Aya recognized many from her years in the shadows. Lord Malachur with his constant sneer, Lady Isolde whose husband had met a convenient end, and dozens of others. Then came the announcement that made her bones ache. His Majesty, King Cailan Valerius, and our honored guest, High Inquisitor Valeriana of the Order of Cinder, the very hunters who had orchestrated the Great Culling, who wore the solidified remains of her people as adornments. Valeriana glided in, a woman of perhaps 30 years, with hair like spun silver and eyes like chips of ice. She wore robes of stark white, with cinder iron chains wrapped around her waist and wrists, serving as both decoration and weaponry. At her throat hung a pendant that made Aya's true nature recoil, a shard of captured Celestian essence, still faintly pulsing with trapped life. The king entered beside her, dressed in black so deep it seemed to absorb the light. His eyes found Aya instantly, tracking her as she took her place behind the high table. "Your Majesty." Valeriana's voice was smooth as silk as she took her seat. "I'm grateful for this welcome. The Order has much to discuss regarding the recent anomalies." "Anomalies?" Cailan's voice was politely interested, though his gaze never left Aya. "Magical signatures in the borderlands. Indications that perhaps not all the Celestians were eradicated. We believe at least one survivor remains, hiding in human form. There have been signs, children born with starlight in their eyes, shadows that behave erratically, cinder iron that warms without a flame." Aya's hand trembled as she poured wine, a single drop splashing onto the white linen like a spot of blood. So, she wasn't the only one who had seen the signs. "Careful," the Inquisitor said, her glacial blue eyes suddenly fixed on her. "A nervous hand often betrays a guilty heart." "Leave the girl be, Valeriana," Cailan commanded softly. "She is not accustomed to serving the high table." Of course, Valeriana's smile sharpened. "Though I must admit, Your Majesty, your servants possess a most unusual energy." The meal dragged on. Each time Aya approached to refill a goblet, she felt Valeriana's gaze on her, assessing, hunting. The pendant at the Inquisitor's throat seemed to grow warmer whenever Aya was near, its trapped essence crying out to its kin. Halfway through the main course, disaster struck. Lord Malachur, well into his cups, seized Aya's wrist as she poured. "A pretty thing, aren't you?" Perhaps the king would be willing to share. Rage, instant and involuntary, surged through her. Her true nature strained against its bonds, and for a fraction of a second, her skin flickered, human flesh becoming translucent to reveal the starlight beneath. Malachur recoiled with a yelp. "Her hand! Did you see?" "You are drunk, Malachur," Cailan said flatly, his alpha command woven through the words. "You saw nothing but a trick of the light. Apologize and retire for the evening." The Lord's mouth worked silently against the command before he mumbled an apology and stumbled away. But Valeriana had seen. Her eyes shone with triumphant predation. "How fascinating," she murmured, rising from her seat. "Your Majesty, if I may?" The Order has developed new techniques for detecting such creatures. Before Cailan could object, she produced a small brazier of consecrated ash. Holy fire! Aya's blood ran cold. The Inquisitor began to sprinkle the ash on nearby servants, who merely brushed it from their clothes in confusion. You see? Harmless to humans, Valeriana said, approaching Aya. But to a Celestian, Aya backed away, but there was nowhere to go. The Inquisitor raised the brazier, and time seemed to crawl. The burning embers arced through the air, glittering like malevolent stars. A hand shot out, catching the ash before it could touch her. Kalen stood between them, the holy fire sizzling against his palm, the sound of his flesh burning filling the sudden silence. The hall gasped. Your Majesty, Valeriana said, taking a step back. You are hurt. You forget your place. Inquisitor, his voice could have frozen the flames. No one threatens what is mine. The possessive claim echoed through the hall. Mine, an alpha's declaration, witnessed by hundreds. Valeriana's eyes narrowed. She is not human, Your Majesty. Surely you can sense. I sense, Kalen interrupted, that you have overstayed your welcome. Guards, escort the High Inquisitor to her chambers. She will remain our guest until this matter is resolved. As guards surrounded her, Valeriana's gaze locked onto Aya with pure hatred. The Order knows what you are, abomination. We have been hunting your kind for 10 years. We will not stop. The palace corridor was a long, empty stretch of moonlight and shadow. Aya ran, her borrowed dress catching at her ankles, her human disguise fracturing with every desperate stride. She could hear pursuit behind her, not the guards, but a presence that made her bones hum and her true self claw at its cage. She burst through a set of doors into the Citadel's vast library, where dust motes danced in the silver beams. Her reflection in the dark glass showed the truth. Her disguise was failing, her features flickering between flesh and starlight. Stop running. His voice was everywhere at once. Kalen materialized from the shadows, as if he were born of them. His burned hand was already healing, a feat she hadn't known was possible for werewolves. The air between them crackled. You knew, she gasped, backing away until she hit a bookshelf. The moment you saw me in the kitchen, you knew. I suspected, he said, closing the distance between them. Your shadow, your scent, the way reality itself seems to bend around you. But it wasn't until I felt the bond that I knew for certain. There is no bond, she denied automatically. Celestians don't have mates. We can't. Lie to yourself, but do not lie to me, he said softly, now so close she could see the gold fracturing the brown of his eyes. I have felt you for years, Serene. Or should I say, Aya? Her true name on his lips shattered her completely. The disguise collapsed. Light erupted from her skin, not harsh, but fluid, like moonlight given form. Her hair floated as if suspended in water, shifting between silver and deep space. Her eyes became pools of cosmic depth. She stood before him as she truly was, the last Celestian, a being of pure magic. He did not recoil. Instead, he reached out, his fingers hovering inches from her face. Magnificent, he breathed. I am a monster, she whispered. Your people hunt mine. The Inquisitor will bring an army. Every moment I stay here, I endanger you. I have been in danger since the day I claimed this throne. His hand finally made contact, and where his skin met her celestial form, starlight danced. My father did not die of natural causes, He was poisoned by those who wanted a weaker king. A puppet, the confession hung between them. She saw the immense weight he carried. Why did you protect me? She asked. Because my wolf knew you before my mind did, he said, his other hand coming up to frame her face. Because for 5 years, I have felt this pull toward the kitchens, toward a quiet servant who made my wolf howl for its mate. Because you're not the only one hiding what you are. Before she could question him, he began to change. It was not the fluid shift of a werewolf, but something primal wrong. His bones snapped and reformed. His skin rippled with fur that seemed to drink the light. When it was over, a colossal wolf stood before her, but its eyes held a terrifying intelligence, its form too large, its presence too ancient. Cursed, he said, his voice a strange growl from lupin jaws. My bloodline carries the curse of the first wolves, those that existed before the moon goddess bound them. We are not fully human, nor fully wolf. We heal from wounds that should be fatal, but holy ash and cinder iron burn us, just as they burn you. Understanding crashed over her. That's why the holy ash burned you. You're not a pure werewolf. You're older. He shifted back, his human form reasserting itself. We are both relics of an older world. Perhaps that is why destiny bound us. He grew serious. The Inquisitor is being watched. But first, you must tell me everything. Why you are here. What you are truly running from. Aya looked at this impossible, cursed king who had claimed her, who had stood between her and holy fire, who had shown her his own monstrous truth. My mother, she began, her form flickering as emotions surged. She did not die in the culling. She became something else, something that hunts. She has been chasing me for 10 years, feeding on Celestian essence to sustain her corrupted existence. I came here because the Citadel's cinder iron wards can also hide magic within. Suddenly, glass exploded inward. Through the shattered window came creatures of living shadow. At their center floated a being that might once have been beautiful, a Celestian whose light had turned to a devouring darkness. "Hello, daughter," her mother, Morwen, said, her voice like the chiming of broken bells. "It is time to come home." The shadow creatures attacked, spreading across the library like spilled ink. Ancient tomes turned to dust at their touch. Aya's light flared, creating a barrier that made them recoil. Protective of your pet, Morwen drifted closer, a twisted version of a Celestian. Where Aya glowed with the soft light of a distant star, Morwen blazed with stolen power, too bright, too harsh. I raised you to be a predator, not prey. You raised me to run, Aya spat back, while you drained our own kind to fuel your power. Kalen moved to her side, his cursed wolf churning just beneath his skin. You must be the anomalies Valeriana spoke of. Morwen's laugh was like shattering crystal. The little Inquisitor. She has been a useful tool, following the trails I leave, flushing out the hidden ones for me to consume, her attention fixed on Kalen. And what are you? Not quite wolf, not quite human. Fascinating. Get behind me, Kalen ordered, but Aya grabbed his arm. No, she's here for me. This is my fight. Our fight, he corrected. He partially shifted, retaining his human shape, but gaining the attributes of the wolf. Claws extended from his fingertips, and his eyes blazed gold. You claimed me when you ran. I claimed you when I stood between you and the fire. That makes us a pack. The word resonated with ancient power. Morwen's expression twisted. Such primitive magic. She gestured, and the shadows attacked again. The library erupted into chaos. Kalen fought like a creature from a nightmare, tearing through shadows with impossible strength. But for every one he destroyed, 2 more took its place. Aya's light began to weaken. A decade of suppression had left her drained. She watched in horror as one shadow slipped past her defenses, aiming for Kalen's unprotected back. No, she threw herself between them. The shadow's claws raked across her shoulder, tearing through her celestial form. She screamed, not a human sound, but a chord of cosmic harmonics that shattered every remaining pane of glass. Starlight blood sprayed across the stone. Where it landed, impossible flowers bloomed, starlight lilies, unfurling in seconds, their soft glow pushing back the darkness. The signs she had seen, the children, the warm iron, it all made sense. Her essence had been leaking into the world, seeding it with her magic. Aya, Kalen caught her as she fell, and something primal inside him snapped. The curse he had fought to control his entire life erupted. His form expanded, twisted, and became something from humanity's oldest fears. Not wolf, not man, but the thing that spawned both, a 12-foot-tall beast of muscle and shadow, with eyes of molten gold. The first wolf, the original monster. Even Morwen fell back as Kalen roared, a sound that shook the citadel to its foundations. He attacked with primordial rage, tearing through the shadows as if they were paper. The curse that had been his family's shame, was now his wrath. But Morwen had been feeding on power for years. As Kaelin charged her, she smiled and spoke a single word in the old tongue. Submit. The command struck him like a physical blow. Not an alpha command, but something far older, the same magic that had once bound the first wolves. Kaelin crashed to his knees, his monstrous form straining against invisible bonds. Fascinating, Morwen mused, circling him. You are not merely a descendant. You are one of them, reborn. She traced a claw along his jaw. I could make use of a creature like you. Mother, Aya struggled upright, starlight blood still flowing from her wound. Please, take me. Leave him be. Take you. Morwen laughed. Oh, daughter, I don't need to take you. You're going to give yourself to me. She gestured, and more shadows seized Kaelin, suspending him between them. His monstrous form began to shrink, the curse forcibly suppressed, leaving him human and vulnerable. Your choice, Morwen said sweetly. Give me your essence willingly, and I will spare your mate. Refuse, and I will make you watch as my shadows tear him apart. Aya looked at Kaelin, his eyes blazing defiance even as his body failed him. She thought of 10 years of running, 10 years of hiding. No more. You want my essence? She stood, her form blazing brighter despite her injury. Then take it. She walked toward her mother, starlight lilies blooming in her wake. But as she moved, she began to speak in the old tongue, not to Morwen, but to the citadel itself, to the cinder iron in its walls. The ancient wards responded. Protections built into the citadel's foundations, designed not just to repel magic, but to contain it, awoke at a Celestian's call. Morwen realized the trap too late. What are you doing? She snarled as energy laced with cinder iron crackled through the air. Something I should have done a decade ago. Aya's form grew brighter, not with healthy light, but with the dangerous glow of a dying star. Cinder iron doesn't just harm us, Mother. In great enough concentration, it can unmake us, returning us to powerless, formless essence. You will destroy yourself as well. Yes, Aya's voice was perfectly calm. But I will take you with me. The wards intensified, pressing inward. Morwen's shadow servants dissolved. The corrupted Celestian herself began to flicker, her stolen power warring against dissolution. You would die for him. Morwen gestured at Kaelin, who watched with desperate eyes. For a cursed mongrel, I have lived in fear for 10 years, Aya said. I would rather have one moment of love than another century of running. Her form began to unravel at the edges. The flowers in the room blazed with light, feeding on her dispersing essence. That's when Kaelin broke free, not with strength, but through their bond. Aya's impending destruction sent a wave of agony through their connection, and his wolf responded with a fury that shattered Morwen's weakening control. He crashed to the floor and lunged, not at Morwen, but at Aya, wrapping his arms around her dissolving form. Stop, he commanded, not as an alpha, but as her mate. You don't get to leave me. He pressed his forehead to hers. You're not the only one who can make a sacrifice, little star. She felt his intention through their bond and was flooded with horror. No, you can't. My curse for your freedom, he smiled, a beautiful, terrible sight. The essence of the first wolf is older than your mother's corruption, older than these wards. If I release it, it will change everything. Not destroy. Transform. I won't let you. Then we do it together. His gold-flecked eyes were full of certainty. Your light, my darkness. Creation and destruction. Balance. Morwen screamed, realizing their plan, and threw herself at them, her form now utterly monstrous. Aya looked into Kaelin's eyes and saw her forever. Together, she agreed. They released everything at once. Aya's Celestian essence exploded outward in waves of pure creation. Kaelin's curse erupted in a tide of primordial darkness. Where light met dark, impossible things happened. The cinder iron wards did not break. They transformed, becoming silver, then gold, then something for which there was no name. Across the kingdom, the children with starlight eyes suddenly understood what they were. Not cursed, but evolving. Morwen's corrupted form, caught between creation and destruction, unraveled. Her stolen power returned to the world, seeding it with new life. Impossible, she shrieked as she dissolved. Celestians and wolves are opposites. We are not opposites. Aya's voice harmonized with Kalen's growl. We are balance. The explosion of power should have leveled the citadel. Instead, it reformed everything. Morwen's essence, purified, dispersed into the cosmic flow. The wards now channel magic, balancing it. At the center of it all, Aya and Kalen collapsed into each other, forever changed. Aya was still Celestian, but threads of shadow were now woven through her starlight. She could hold a human form without effort, the wolf's curse having stabilized her fluidity. Kalen was still cursed, but the first wolf was now merged with his human side, not at war with it. They were something new. Dawnlight crept through the shattered windows, illuminating a garden of starlight lilies and shadow roses. Guards burst in, weapons ready, only to freeze at the sight of their king holding a being of living starlight. Behind them came Valeriana, chains rattling. She stopped dead, her pendant, the Celestian shard, suddenly glowing with warm, living light. 3 days later, the throne room of Duskfall Citadel was the setting for a trial unlike any other. Word had spread. The last Celestian lived, claimed by the Alpha King, and their union had altered the very fabric of magic. Valeriana stood before the court, her white robes seeming dull next to Aya's natural luminescence. Throughout the crowd, children with starlight-flecked eyes watched, finally understanding. She is an abomination, Valeriana declared, though her voice lacked its earlier conviction. We are dangerous when isolated, Kalen corrected from his throne, Aya beside him, just as wolves were before the moon goddess. You speak heresy. I speak evolution, Kalen replied, rising. A crown of living shadow formed above his head, made deeper and richer by Aya's light. Show them, Aya whispered. She stepped forward and touched the pendant at the Inquisitor's throat. The crystal blazed with joyful life. The essence inside spiraled free, painting visions across the ceiling, memories of Celestians who had lived and loved, and of their essence seeding itself into the world. They never truly died, Aya said softly. Our essence dispersed, becoming part of the next generation. Every child born since the culling carries a piece of us. The pendant crumbled to dust. Where it had rested against Valeriana's skin, silver marks appeared, not burns, but blessings. The prophecies, she whispered. The convergence. We thought it meant one would dominate, but it meant unity. Your cinder iron, our celestial essence, the wolf curses, human resilience. Aya finished. All parts of a greater whole. A commotion at the door drew their attention. Guards dragged in Lord Malachur, his form flickering with unstable, celestial light. He had tried to steal power from one of the gifted children and been corrupted by it. He lunged at Aya. Kalen moved to intercept, but Aya stopped him. Instead of defending herself, she opened her arms. Malachur passed through her, his corrupted form unable to hold against pure acceptance. He collapsed, human again, shaking. Power taken by force corrupts, Aya said, helping him stand. Power given freely transforms. Kalen raised his hand for silence. From this day, Duskfall Citadel is open to all, human, wolf, and whatever new forms arise. We will teach balance, not segregation. And the Order of Cinder? Valeriana asked. It becomes the Order of Balance, Aya suggested. Protectors, not hunters. Valeriana looked at the silver marks on her chest, then at the children. I accept. 3 months later, Duskfall was a beacon. The gardens where starlight lilies grew beside shadow roses were a place of pilgrimage. Children with newfound gifts came to learn control. Wolves who fought their curses found peace. Aya stood on the highest tower watching the sunset, her form shifting freely between human and celestian. Arms wrapped around her from behind. Regrets? Kalen asked. How could I? She turned in his arms. I spent a decade pretending to be human, only to learn that humanity was pretending too. Everyone hiding their true selves. And now Now we are all becoming what we were meant to be. Beautifully mixed, impossibly balanced. He kissed her, and where their lips met, light and shadow danced. Across the kingdom, every magical being felt it, the mate bond that had become a foundation for a new world. In the gardens below, a child laughed, born human, touched by starlight, with the strength of a wolf and the discipline of iron. The first of a generation that would know no division. Your Majesties, Ilara appeared. The delegation from the Sunstone Kingdoms has arrived. As they descended together, hiding nothing, Ire reflected on her journey. For 10 years she had pretended, only to discover that everyone was hiding their full selves out of fear. When the Alpha King had marked her as his, he had broken not just her chains, but everyone's. The age of hiding was over. The age of balance had begun. Sometimes we spend so long pretending, we forget our true nature isn't meant to be hidden. It's meant to be shared.